So if you need that, please go to the bottom of your screen, right click on the box with CC written on it and select show captions. So there will be, of course, should be live chat, and feel free to also connect with the Muslim Civic Coalition on social media with Facebook and Instagram. I want to be sure that I can also let you know that there will be follow-up to this event with resources and a recap of what has been beautifully shared from upcoming speakers, inshallah. And definitely check the chat for other messages to follow us, as well as any thoughts and comments you'd like to share. With that, I want to turn over to our moderator for this important discussion, Sister Amira Turner, who is our development lead with the Muslim Civic Coalition. Amira?
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum, and happy Juneteenth to everyone. I'm really glad to be in space with everyone and have the opportunity to introduce a lot of our speakers. So yes, I'll be helping to moderate and share some history and fun facts about this holiday. So I'll actually pass it back because I think we're going to do the video first before we get into the discussion.
That is right. And just to showcase what the video is about, so this is, we want our community to know why there is this day called Juneteenth. We don't want to make the assumption that everyone knows this is about. So this is presented by the PBS of Iowa.
Juneteenth, short for June 19th, is the day commemorating the end of slavery in the United States. It's a holiday that has been celebrated since 1866 and represents a critical turning point in American history. Open up a classroom history book, and the author might say that slavery ended on January 1st, 1863. The day when President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, it established that all enslaved people in the Confederate States in the rebellion against the Union shall be then, thenceforth, and forever.
Can everyone hear the video audio? Oh, okay, perfect.
Yes.
Yes.
Somewhat. I missed most of it, but I heard it. Yes.
Free.
Yes.
Of course, the proclamation stated this, but it did not instantly free any enslaved people. It would take another 2 years for slavery to end in the United States. In Texas, slavery continued uninterrupted during the Civil War. The state wasn't involved in large-scale battles, and there wasn't a real presence of Union troops. 2 months after the war came to a close, U.S. General Gordon Granger arrived on Texas soil and read General Order No. 3. The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the United States, all slaves
join the meeting.
Granger's arrival marked the freedom for 250,000 enslaved people in the state. Although emancipation didn't happen overnight, celebrations broke out among newly freed Black people. Juneteenth was born. The following year, freed people in Texas organized the first of what became the annual celebration of Jubilee Day on June 19th. The holiday wasn't widely celebrated across the country, but the traditions continued to grow over the next several decades. By 1979, Texas became the first state to make Juneteenth an official holiday. Finally, in June 2021, Congress passed a resolution establishing Juneteenth as a national holiday.
And now we take you live to the East Room of the White House, where President Biden is going to sign the law making Juneteenth a national holiday.
All right.
Juneteenth marks a date of major significance in American history. It's the longest tradition of celebrating the emancipation of thousands of enslaved people who forcibly worked and lived in inhumane conditions. The 2-year march from when the Emancipation Proclamation was signed to the arrival of troops in Texas as a metaphor for the many ways in which freedoms for Black people have been delayed in this country. Today, the holiday is a way to acknowledge past faults, help heal current divisions, and move toward a future of a more perfect union.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed that. And then I also want to reference the chat too. We'll be sharing resources and access to the video and information we're sharing today. So if anyone wants to share with other people, as well as reference some of the information shared. So I'll start off by introducing Imam Lawrence Najib. He's the Associate Director of the nonprofit Ephraim Bahar Cultural Center, EBCC. And the EBCC aims to motivate and inspire future generations through Islamic studies and holistic curriculum that also covers science, technology, leadership development, and business development, all of which can come together for the betterment of the community at large. So if you're available, I'd love for you to share some of your story and the work that you guys are doing. You're on mute at the.
We got it. So sorry. Thank you. Peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum. I'm Imam Lawrence Najib from the Ephraim Bahar Culture Center here in Chicago on the southwest side. And I'm filling in for Imam, who is the executive director, Imam Omar Abdul Kareem. He was unable to be here because of his work schedule. So yes, the Ephraim Bahar Culture Center was actually became incorporated back in, I think, around 1994. At our present location. And we are a community service, Muslim service community on the southwest side. And what we should is try to engage in activities that is really to uplift the human spirit and the human being, period, as far as that goes. Our biggest event is what we would call the Walk for More Excellence, which we haven't had in about 3 years because of the pandemic. I think the last one we had was back in 2019. But we do plan to continue that as soon as we're able to, get back on track and be pretty much free from all the things that kind of put us on a setback. We also have other activities, other ventures, such as we just celebrated our Pioneer Social, which is an event that we honor the pioneers of our history, of the community, led by Imam Wardi Muhammad, all the way back to the beginning, back in 1933, when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad first established the Nation of Islam. So we're celebrating those heroes, those, we call them pioneers, but we also looked at them as playing the same, many of them played the same role as the Muhajirin of the Prophet. When they migrated, sacrificed their lives, everything they had, their homes, their families, for the cause of Islam. So those pioneers of today, we honor them, once a year, or once every 2 years. I think it's the first one we had in 2 years. We also have, on a quarterly basis, our feeding and clothing the homeless. That's where we put together some food and clothes, not necessarily a lot of clothes, such as outer garments, because people are homeless. They say the basic thing they need is hygiene and undergarments and things of that nature. So we put together, we get donations, and we go out to various locations around the city to try to do what we can to help those people who are basically living on the streets in different shelters. We also have other programs. Probably we have our computer program was kind of on hold at this moment because of, again, because of the pandemic. A lot of things fell off, but we still managed to keep our doors open and being engaged with the public. But we do plan to have, some of those things back on track in the near future. We're working on it, as well as some other programs we have. The Juneteenth we look at Juneteenth as a necessary part of our history to knowing about the history of Juneteenth, just like this short video that we just saw. I believe Juneteenth also has a connection with our Islamic history, because we know that a lot of Muslims that were brought over here during the slave trade, during the hundreds of years of slave trade, and a lot of them actually, is that a bell for me to time? Hello? Okay. I guess it's somebody chat. Well, anyway.
No, that was someone morning. But I do wanted to highlight real quick ways that people can get involved with your organization. And then also I did want to highlight for speakers, if you guys have an additional 5 to 10 minutes after, maybe for people to engage you so that people can learn more about your work. But yeah, so how people can support you.
Well, we also, there's ways to contact us. Our website is ebaharcenter.com. That's the letter E, BAHARCENTER.com. We also on Facebook. We have our Facebook backup. If one time it had been hacked, but Imam Omar managed to get it going again. Praise be to Allah. And we also have, our phone number is 773-476-8825, as well as our mailing address is 2525 West 71st Street, Chicago, Illinois, 60629. And there's different ways that we can be contacted. So we encourage, we do take donations. We welcome any donation. We thank you in advance for your generous donation to our culture center, because our objective is to engage in the public and bring the message of Islam to the public, so the public can have a better understanding of who we are and what we do in the service to Almighty God. So we thank you, and we pray that Allah continue to bless all of us in engaging in and helping for His cause. And may we praise and venerate the Prophet Muhammad, prayers and peace be upon him. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Imam Najib. So I want to move on to our next speaker, Dr. Constance Shabazz. Dr. Constance Shabazz is CEO and co-founder of the Salam Community Wellness Center, located on Chicago's South Side. She's been a healthcare social justice advocate for over 50 years, advocating for the rights of all to have access to affordable and quality healthcare. The Salam Community Wellness Center was established in 2020 and was created with the intent of addressing some of the health and healthcare disparities and inequities that were exacerbated as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. So I will pass it over to you, Dr. Shabazz.
Yes, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, peace be unto you. Just want to make some comments about Juneteenth. This is really a bittersweet occasion for me. I cannot truly feel that I can celebrate, for celebration really implies that there's some form of victory or overcoming, and we never hear a reference to the end of the Holocaust as being a celebration. I cannot truly celebrate an occasion that denied my people their freedom. I wonder how many of my enslaved ancestors never got to hear the words that they were freed and died before it was uttered, waiting 2 years. And I'm saddened to think that despite the fact that my ancestors were finally told of their emancipation, it meant little when they owned nothing for their years of their forced labor. In fact, they were forced to stay on the very plantations to labor under a new form of slavery because they had nowhere else to go. You see, emancipation without reparations is not cause for celebration. So don't get me wrong. I celebrate, as I always try to do. I celebrate despite the fact that what we Black people have and continue to go through in this country. I celebrate our sacrifice and our perseverance, the excellence in our communities, the resilience and the strength to continue to fight for freedom, justice, and equity. And I use equity instead of equality. As we fast forward, looking just in the past 3 years, when we saw the world
join the meeting
and pinned down on the ground and his life taken away, many of us thought that the public outrage that went around the world was an inflection point for all of us. I recall even members of my own Muslim community acknowledged the racist attitudes and actions that some had exhibited Black Muslims and Black people in general. And there were numerous forums and workshops and trainings on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Kutbahs were replete with references to the need for change. I was kind of skeptical about how long this was going to last. And my prediction was that these signs of change would probably last no more than 6 months. My prediction was shortened by 1 or 2 months. So you see, once again, we can't truly have a celebration without reparations. We can commemorate an occasion. We must, in this day and time, use this as a moment of reflection, introspection, and most importantly, action. You know, when we started the Salam Community Wellness Center, we started to be an example of reparations. It's a response to not only longstanding healthcare, but social justice and equities. We call on each and every one of you to find your calling to address the unmet needs and communities that have been deliberately left to fend for themselves with chronic disinvestment. I recently read the website of a well-known Muslim-led philanthropic foundation, and I believe their goals and purpose are a clear blueprint for what we all should be doing. And I'm paraphrasing some of the things that I took from that website. That we should support self-reliance in disinvested communities with skills acquisition, readying individuals for employment, or more desirably, to empower entrepreneurship. We should underwrite things such as anti-gun violence initiatives in city neighborhoods and send those children to school with adequate supplies and good education. We should be providing medical services, providing resources to address America's growing food and healthcare deserts, and upholding those who seek to build just societies and empower local communities by advocating for policies that correct societal racism, sectarianism, and discrimination, fostering equal rights and fairness, nurturing human rights and social egalitarianism, and campaigning for the rights of the earth and its creatures, and especially a halt to the causes of climate change. All of these should be regardless as to race, ethnicity, or religious beliefs as a test of aiding them. So we should not judge anyone's behaviors nor attribute their affliction to the judgment of God. And I think this is really critical because oftentimes people look at the conditions in many African-American communities and say that it is their fault. No, it's because of decades and centuries of disinvestment, a lack of access to equitable resources, for housing loans, things, all the redlining that has left people feeling helpless and hopeless. And that finally, that our giving and support not be attached to any strings and that we make no demands. So I pray to Allah that we will all heed this call to action. I would love to share with you what we're trying to do and hope to inspire you to do similar things in the communities, in your community and the communities that are in most need. May Allah bless each and every one of us. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chavez. I always feel like it's so powerful when you speak. So definitely please, people look into more of the work that she's doing. I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Naja Ali, who is a national television journalist based out of Chicago. The Philadelphia native is passionate in ensuring the authentic voices that accurately represent communities and faiths of color, as always, part of the conversation. This issue closest to her heart has fueled her work in the industry since her first internship as a high school student. So I'll open up the space for you to share some of the work that you do.
Thank you for having me this morning. I'm really honored. As a journalist, I'm talking to different people all the time from different social, economic backgrounds. And the one thing that I do realize that people watch the news and what they say most often is that Black people in particular are viewed negatively, and that impacts them through their work, through their children, through their neighborhoods. Whether they are involved in a white collar crime or a shooting, the way it's covered by the news media impacts that. As a journalist, I have to take the reins in regards to how I would like to cover stories. And so that means that I have to make sure that I am not covering anything with any bias and that I'm telling the full story. Often, I feel like as journalists, we've lost the mark in regards to that. That's journalism 101. For other stories, I rely on some of my family and friends And I also do my own research. One of the stories I came across earlier this year was of Dr. Corbett. She was a Black woman who helped to develop the COVID-19 vaccine. These are the stories that our community needs to highlight, rather than the criminal activities that often get the majority of news coverage. I feel like for Juneteenth, we need to recognize that it is an American holiday that needs to be celebrated and shared widely. When I was going to school, it was not taught. I learned it as an adult, and that's a problem. And as far as being a journalist, I always encourage people to share their stories. You know, sometimes we live in our own bubbles within our newsrooms. I sometimes scroll social media and I'll find stories to cover. And if you really do have a problem with the media, I would encourage you to get involved. Make the calls necessary to radio stations, to TV stations, to newspapers, that there's a story in your community that needs to be covered and why. That's the only way you could change what you're seeing in the national and local media. Anyway, I just want to thank you guys again for having me. I am so honored. Thanks.
Thanks so much. And I think, you know, you shared a great point of how to get involved and sort of the call to action that we're talking about throughout the different speakers. So I know we're getting close to 8:30 or 10:30, but if people can stay on for a few more minutes, we'd love that. And I'll welcome our last speaker, Usama Kamel. He's a grad student, community organizer, and an artist. He's raised in the South Sacramento area and currently resides in the Bay Area. So I'll open it up to you when you have.
Thank you, Amira, and thank you folks for joining us on the call. I'm honored to be invited by my brother Gerald to share a few words with you this morning. My Juneteenth message, to be specific, is to non-Black folks and immigrant communities, because I think it'll help us sort of tailor this discussion a little bit. At least it'll help me organize my thoughts. And so these are just a few reflections that I've been having today. Juneteenth is a celebration of freedom and triumph, absolutely. It's also a reminder of great pain and betrayal, and to be specific, the betrayal and violence of this country. White landowners intentionally hid the news from enslaved peoples, hoping that they could reap the rewards of the harvest before it was all public. It was no coincidence, and the quote unquote good guys in the story were in on it too. In fact, this was a kind of compromise. The system of enslavement in this country was unlike anything the world had ever seen before. And Dr. Stephanie Batiste at UC Santa Barbara says that slavery governed human identity, sexual, economic, legal, trade, labor, political, regional, national, and international features of structural and everyday life in an epic and intergenerational fashion. It was a global system. The US and the world participated in it. And no one has taken full accountability for the sheer impacts of 400 plus years of race-based slavery that forged the modern era. Its effects are everywhere, in every field, in every sector, across various institutions. Slavery lives on, and not just in memory, but in the very functionality of this country. We're not free from the violence of enslavement, and many of us very much benefit from it. So today we got to ask ourselves, what is it that we are celebrating as non-Black folks? What is it that we are celebrating as immigrant communities? Many in our community have bought into the illusions of whiteness and white supremacy in ways that we're not even conscious of sometimes. We have pledged ourselves to capitalism and this global system that seeks to plunder the world of everything that is beautiful. And many of us are content with the narrative of America the good, the place where you can pull yourself up by the bootstraps. America, the place where it's got to be your fault you're on the street, your fault you can't pay the bills with 3 jobs, your fault your children are not thriving at school, your fault you can't pay your medical bills, your fault you're being forced out of the communities you were raised in because it's getting too expensive for you, your fault you are stopped by the cops all the time, your fault you are in prison, your fault for wearing that hoodie, your fault for being disabled and walking home, your fault you were playing video games with your nephew when officers busted into your home and shot you down. Religious liberty where your liberty is relegated to 4 corners of a domed building is not enough. Building an Islamic school is not enough. Getting your name off an FBI watch list is not enough. Small wins are great and we got to celebrate them when we can. But what is the larger strategy? What do the next 50 years look like for us? How will we address the material sufferings of people, the material conditions of people? Juneteenth is a reminder of unfinished work. It's a reminder that power is taken and not given. Juneteenth is a reminder that we got to stay vigilant and disciplined, to be conscious of our unconsciousness. Juneteenth is a reminder that you can get a policy on paper, but those in power always have another play. Jim Crow was the other play. The prison system was another play and is another play. Distributing drugs into our communities was another play. Gentrification is another play. Exorbitant police budgets replacing social services in our communities is another play. Giving one of your people a seat at the table when the rest of us are struggling is another play. The illusion of justice and democracy, the Hollywood representation of freedom is another play. Social, political, and economic death and its strategies are not plays of the past. They are very much in motion right now and have been. The building of Cop City, for example, in Atlanta, is one of those strategies by the state to control the voice and power of a people, to control the bodies of a people, to protect capitalism. In this moment, there has to be a united front to say, stop Cop City. I mean, we're celebrating. What are we celebrating? Celebrating Juneteenth is about committing ourselves and yourselves to the liberation of Black people. It's about a commitment to anti-racism, to education. It's not enough to say that you're against racism in this country. Ignorance is complicity. And to confront your ignorance, you will need more than a Netflix documentary or a racism 101 teaching. Allyship and political consciousness requires a commitment of your body, of your heart, of your spirit, and of your wealth too. Justice is possible when we think of those that are struggling in our midst, when we center their stories and their experiences, when we hold ourselves accountable for grave mistakes and poor judgment. Justice is possible when we work in partnership with one another to build something more sustainable, something more empathetic, more equitable, more liberatory. And a lot of times we like to think that, and we articulate that justice is in the akhirah. I believe that too, but I also believe that justice is possible here, and we got to work that way too. We got to move with that kind of energy, that justice is possible here. On Juneteenth, we remember the revolutionary power of survival and the resistance of Black Americans. We celebrate the methodologies of hope and strategies of redemption that Black folks graciously share with us. And we commit, and we have to commit to service and to learning. So today we remember the past to prepare for the difficulties of this present. So thank you for being here. I think this is a step in the right direction. Let's continue the conversation, y'all.
Thank you so much. So I also want to highlight, before I pass it back over, is just the idea of coming together and highlighting a lot of these things. And so something that I'm sure a lot of people have heard is existing is resisting. And the idea of it is difficult to think about celebrating us in these spaces, but also that we're doing this work and that we don't stop, we don't slow down, that we continue to add pressure and continue to push people to understand that they need to recognize us and recognize us in these spaces. So thank you so much for the empowering words. And then I'll also pass it back over to Gerald. So thank you so much.
To each of our speakers, and thank you, Amira, for moderating this. You know, for us to move forward as a nation, as a community, as a ummah, you know, we have to take stock of what has happened in our past. That wonderful adage, you know, we're doomed to repeat history if we don't learn from those lessons. And some of the things that I've heard from each of the speakers, there's something rooted in why things have come into their roles and what guided them to their work, what guided to creations of some of their organizations. This is something that we need to keep informing ourselves into what we could be as abolitionists, what we could be as freedom fighters, what we could be as civic justice advocates. And so definitely it's not only a day to reflect, but to be sure that we can heed the calls to action. So we do our part and then come together to do more to make right of the injustices that now exist. I want to invite Imam Lawrence to close us out with a dua. And then, as mentioned before, people want to stay. If for questions or a quick discussion, we could do that. But Imam Lawrence, can you please close us out officially with dua?
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal as inna insana lafi khusr illa ladina amanu wa amilu salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq but the one shall be accepted. With Allah's name, merciful, benefactor, merciful redeemer. By the time through the ages, surely the human being is lost, except those who practice love for each other and supporting each other and doing good for the cause of Allah and for the cause of justice. Ameen.